So these are the kinds of things that the AI can actually speak with the prospect about, qualify them naturally, almost like a natural fronter or like a sales development representative with very human-like speech qualities, but not to be confused with pretending to be a human. It's quite clear that they are not human, but they're just human enough that you can interact with them naturally, comfortably, and then that natural flow of dialogue we find facilitates a better flow of information.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Arbeit. Today I am joined here with Alex Doonanco of AI Rudder. He's going to be speaking at the upcoming Contact.io conference on human or AI pioneering journey into conversational voice AI in the pay-per-call industry. But today we have an equally exciting topic. We're going to be talking about conversational voice AI and how that is transforming the B2C call space right now. So Alex, first of all, thanks so much for joining us here today. Super excited to have you.
Glad to be here.
For people who aren't familiar with you or maybe aren't familiar with your company, could you just kick us off and tell us a little bit about what you guys do over there?
Yeah, for sure. With the preface to the two topics we're going to be speaking about, it's a little bit of a sneak peek. But we do conversational voice AI for B2C phone call interactions in particular. Right now, we're serving the pay-per-call industry and all of the verticals that are served by the pay-per-call industry primarily. So that's everything from financial services down to lending, down to insurance, etc. So these are sales cycles that are heavily phone dependent in their interactions. So you may have seen conversational AI in the context of chatbots, for example, maybe for customer service. We're more focused on the sales cycle side of things and then customer service that involves phone calls. So really what we're doing right now in the pay-per-call industry is the qualification side of things for inbounds and then allowing companies to reactivate aged leads by initiating AI-generated phone calls on the outbound side. So what we can do is bring your leads back into the funnel by calling them and then having a human-like conversation with them, and then ideally transferring qualified leads to the next person who is to take on that interaction, whether that's a closer, or maybe if you're in the pay-per-call industry, it's the buyer of those calls, the end service provider for insurance, lending, etc.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a very exciting topic right now. And I feel like AI just across the board, it's really dominating the space and the technology that everybody's excited about. For maybe the person who's listening to this and this is kind of their first introduction to conversational AI, can you kind of just back up on that a little bit and just give us like this super like high level view of what that is and what that term means, and we continue to talk about it?
Yeah, so even this question, because we're at the precipice of this new technology, is very fascinating, right? Everyone's familiar with the conventional robots and robocalls that they might receive or they might interact with when they call their bank, for example, right? So that's conventionally understood as IVR, which stands for interactive voice response. So these systems are quite rigid, right? They might ask you to press 1 or 2 and send you through a series of predetermined steps. And then in conjunction with those predetermined steps are often a series of pre-recorded voice messages, very rarely AI generated or using generative AI in real time. So what we do is not IVR, nothing is predetermined per se. What we're doing is using large language models in conjunction with ASR, automatic speech recognition, and then subsequently TS, text-to-speech, to create a congruent and natural like conversational experience to achieve some kind of an objective. So the objective might be to qualify and transfer a lead, let's say in Medicare, right? So in Medicare, for example, there's several questions that you need to ask a prospect to determine whether or not you actually want to send them to an agent or send them to an end buyer. For example, if they're enrolled in Medicare A and B maybe, or if they're actually of the right age to be qualified for these services. So these are the kinds of things that the AI can actually speak with the prospect about, qualify them naturally, almost like a natural fronter or like a sales development representative with very human-like speech qualities, but not to be confused with pretending to be a human. It's quite clear that they are not human, but they're just human enough that you can interact with them naturally, comfortably, and then that natural flow of dialogue we find facilitates a better flow of information. So you're able to collect more information about your customers, and your customers are able to better understand and better be prepared to get your services as a result.
Very cool. Yeah. One of the things that you said in there that stood out to me a lot is that it's not intended to sound exactly like a human. That's not the intention of it. It is its own thing, but I've encountered a variety of different, whether it's on the IVR side where it doesn't have the ability to converse back and forth with you, or whether it is on the AI side. I know myself, I've the worst culprit of it where I'll get particularly the IVRs and I'll just be like, get me to a person, get me to a person. For you, I have to imagine that's a common thing that when you have clients working with us, that comes up. Do you find that people are becoming more open to speaking to these conversational AI bots as they become more advanced and as they're able to help customers better over time?
Yeah, so a huge part of it, really with any new technology and the adoption curve is educating the consumer, right? So we're really in a stage right now where consumers, as well as us, as well as our customers, are learning about how people interact with AI, right? Even ourselves working in this field and implementing this technology for many businesses, we don't often receive many calls from AI in our day-to-day lives, right? So what we're finding is, of course, different customers from different audiences will react differently. Some people are treating it like it's a very rudimentary bot. Some people just give it one-word responses, give it voice commands, things like represent it,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
okay, right? Because it's equipped to handle that. For those who are more familiar with AI technologies and its capabilities, they'll speak with it almost like they're speaking to a human representative already. And in that case, we're able to help them a lot more. But in our case, really, regardless, we design these use cases, we design these solutions in a way that accounts for how the customers will interact with AI. And that will change over time. So we allow data, we allow the transcripts and the quality of these interactions to really determine how we build the solution around it. And it's very different depending on which audience we're dealing with, and it will continue to evolve. But right now, what we found is people are steadily, slowly becoming more natural with their interactions with AI because they're aware of the capabilities. And in that case, if they are, then oftentimes the AI is able to handle their request from start to finish rather than having to speak with a representative, and it's more convenient for everyone involved. In other cases, though, we're perfectly happy to send to a representative. Totally depends on the use case.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense of what you're saying there with adoption. And yeah, I know even for myself, whereas like maybe 5 years ago, like it was a much more limited experience. I've definitely encountered some in the recent time where it's actually been able to process my entire request, which is always really cool to come across and encounter that. For businesses out there who they've heard of conversational AI, they're maybe considering implementing it in their office. It sounds like it's still something where it's not replacing the traditional agent, but it's just helping and facilitating getting people to the right place, maybe managing some of those lower tier requests and helping with that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, the value proposition differs depending on what stage of the customer journey we're inserting AI into. So if it's a customer service use case, we find that our value proposition is saving a lot of time for your agents and maybe replacing a fraction of what they do, and often the most frustrating, most redundant, most procedural portions of what they do, right? If there's a repetitive request that they're getting and the answer is simply a set of steps, right?
Yeah.
Then AI can help people through those steps quite easily. And then if it's a very fringe request that's not really in your existing FAQs or knowledge base, then it might be more valuable. Or let's say the customer prefers to just have an interaction with an individual. So agents will always be around in those use cases. However, where I'll say we have the most value that we're perceiving right now is in that sales use case where we're doing things like
Mhm.
qualification, right? So that is very procedural in nature. And oftentimes in the pay-per-call industry, people are using an IVR to do this already. But
Right.
there's so many use cases, especially in higher ticket verticals, everything from Medicare to legal calls, things like mass tort, where a lot of complex qualification is required. And IVR isn't capable of asking these kinds of questions, but they might think it's overkill to have an agent in this long value chain of transferring the caller to various places before they get to the end buyer. So that's really where we find that our greatest value is we can have a natural human conversation and ask several qualification steps where you might not want to hire an agent, right? But this is just about requiring an agent is at the level we're at. So that's our bread and butter at this stage.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense of what you said. And I think, again, like the use case that the specific company has will probably dictate a lot of what that looks like. And again, this probably varies a lot from company to company too. But let's say a company's interested in this. It sounds like something that they would want to try and implement. Let's say they sign up day one. Like, what's the time frame from them getting this out of the box to this model kind of being like ready to actually start taking and vetting calls? Like, How long is that process to get it trained?
Yeah, so we really pride ourselves in having quite an out of the box solution for our customers, at least from their perspective. Our teams are working hard in the background, but it's quite simple, especially if we've already built out a use case in that space before. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we're already serving basically every vertical that the pay-per-call industry serves. So anyone who is wanting to get live transfers and wanting to get consumers on the phone via an existing live phone call. So that's everything from legal to insurance to lending, debt consolidation, and most home services, things like appliance repair, pest control. So because we have experience in these spaces and we have existing bots and prompts that we built in the past, we can often apply those to the use case on day one. And then in terms of the ramp up time, it's really about optimization for your campaign. So what we do is we have a dedicated CSM that will look at the data every day and understand your traffic sources better, which is really where every campaign differs. You might be buying from several different affiliates, and we can detect in the first few days, okay, maybe the language on the landing page that this affiliate is using is not really conducive to the campaign you're running because all these calls are not getting transferred, they're not qualified. And that it's a pest control campaign, but all these people on the phone are asking about wolves. For
Yeah.
example, we've had this. Really, if it's a use case we've already built, we can get up and running initially within about a week. And then
Okay.
from there, we do a pilot program that typically takes 3 to 4 weeks where we really dial in and optimize the campaign
Okay.
and then explore other use cases that we can build out.
Very cool. It's actually faster than I was thinking. I've in the past, again, I've gone to different conferences and I would sit on these sessions. And I think at one point I was hearing it was taking like months and like sometimes years to train these models. So it's really cool hearing you say that somebody can come in and not too long of a time have a solution that's fit for them. So that's really cool.
I think that's actually, you touch on something really important. It's one of the reasons I actually joined the company. AI Rudder has been around since 2019, doing different forms of conversational voice AI, serving financial institutions and e-commerce, various different use cases. And so by virtue of having that expertise in large language models, before anyone was talking about large language models, we have a lot of data that we can pull from in
Okay.
building these bots and lots of expertise. Rather than just being a wrapper around ChatGPT, like a lot of these companies out here, we have that dedicated expertise and millions of phone calls under our belt. So we can tweak to a new use case very quickly. And that being said, the initial experience is useful to get live right away, but every campaign is different. So
Right.
that expertise where it really shines and really shows is once we go live, how quickly we can optimize and dial it in as well.
Yeah, and being early in that game, I feel like that has to be a huge advantage because I know even the last time that I was at Contact IO was 2 years ago, and at the time, AI it was like it was a topic, it was exciting, but it was nowhere near where it is now. I imagine that's a huge advantage for you guys in the marketplace. One of the things that I was curious about, and I'm not sure if your model has maybe since you guys have more experience, if it's more dialed in this sense, but if the consumer's on the phone and let's say maybe they have a regional accent or maybe they have a bad connection, things like that, which obscure the way that the AI model is able to hear it. Do you guys find problems with that in conversing with the consumers?
Yeah, great question. So that's on the ASR, the automatic speech recognition side of things. Once again, that's where the expertise comes in. So I love this question. Something really impressive and really funny about AI Rudder is they have expertise serving many different languages, many different markets, right? And that's not just to say we have access to models of many languages, but they've actually done millions of calls in different
Mm.
languages. And AI Rudder, I don't know if you've heard Singlish, for example, or Hinglish in Hindi, where
Yeah.
or in India, where people are speaking half Hindi, half
Yeah.
English.
Yeah.
We've served customers in these markets.
Okay.
So our bots can even handle when someone is switching languages halfway through a sentence. And it's quite impressive. Yeah, it blows my mind every time, actually.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was on a call earlier this week, and the person I had been on the call with, they were not a native English speaker. They spoke Spanish as their first language, and they kept saying, "Oh, my Spanglish is so bad." And I was literally thinking about our call coming up. I wanted to ask that question, so it's funny that you brought that up, and it's cool to hear that's like a use case that you guys can handle. With that said, like one of for us in particular, most of our clients they're in the debt collection space, and a big concern that like we have anytime that we start talking about AI or any of these models, things like that things like third-party disclosure, HIPAA, the data privacy for consumers is like, how does that kind of work on your side? Are there things that as these companies start to build out these models, they maybe have to be mindful of what they're putting into these flows?
Absolutely. Yeah. When people start building a use case with us, Their immediate question is around the script, right? Because they're very used to the idea of scripting these technologies,
Mhm.
thinking about it as something like a pre-recorded or avatar-like technology, right? Now, it's important to realize that we're not an avatar technology. We're nothing pre-recorded. So under the TCPA, we're not actually classified as a particular definition at the moment, which is both exciting, but also something we need to be mindful of and very cognizant of as things evolve with regulation, right? So we're keeping things above board right now. We're being very proactive with regulatory side, both on data security, but also with consumer protection, right? So when it comes to regulation, I would say the most important consideration for us is on outbound campaigns that we have the right opt-ins to receive communications.
Right.
And we're really diligent about making sure that our customers have that, not buying like millions of co-reg leads from an unknown source.
Yeah.
Extremely important on our end because we are doing outbound communications via phone, right?
Mm.
And another thing is do not call. Being able to scrub existing do not call registry. So we scrub the national do not call registry for existing numbers and existing names that might be in there. But in addition to that, the bots can actually tell do not call intent, right? So if you express in any way, in any variety of expressions or combination of words that you do not want to be contacted anymore,
Mm.
our AI is able to detect that, able to mark that in your system. And not only will we not call them anymore, but we can mark in your CSS, in your CRM, or in your LMS that you should
Okay.
not contact these leads anymore, at least by phone. Yeah.
It's really interesting hearing you say that. So it sounds, I guess, two pieces to this question. It sounds like for one, it has the ability to maybe notate things inside of the CRM for the agents, but also one of the questions I had in that scenario where it's starting out, it's going through the bot, and then it transfers over to an agent. Maybe it can't handle the conversation going forward. I know for us, a lot of times we have clients who will utilize like a warm transfer feature if they're going from one agent to another, explain what's going on in the situation. Does it provide the agent with maybe any sort of information leading up to that call getting transferred of what's happened so far?
Yeah. So it depends on the use case. If we're working with someone in a customer service use case, for example, or a CX use case, we actually have an interface for our customers where agents can see the transcript in real time of the AI conversation, as well as some summary analysis on the conversation, depending on how long it is. So when they're receiving that call, they pick up right where they left off. There's no need for the customer to explain what they were just talking about, which is a huge pain point. In the case where we're dealing with, for example, someone who is selling leads to maybe a law firm to be live transferred to them, it's hard for us to transmit that information in real time.
Right.
But what we do is API integrations to send that transcript data and analysis. So if, for example, we have a pay-per-call company which has that relationship with their buyer, we can very easily send that data through APIs directly to their buyer. But
Okay.
just by virtue of being one degree of removal in the value chain, we don't directly integrate with, let's say, that law firm's systems.
Right. Right.
However, if we work with the law firm, then we do. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. So, final thoughts wrapping up here today for somebody out there, maybe they're on the fence about this technology, or I guess if there's just any misconceptions that you think people typically have about conversational AI in general, what would you say to that person out there?
I would say at this point in time, it's a lot more intelligent than people give it credit for, to the degree that it is shocking, right? So don't think of it as a rudimentary IVR replacement. Think about it more like a human agent replacement or something that can augment and support your existing human agents in doing their job better by saving them a ton of time, either with unqualified leads or with very redundant, repetitive requests. When I say redundant, repetitive requests, I'm not talking about extremely basic things either. I'm talking about very conversational issues that may require some significant back and forth to resolve, but it can do end-to-end resolutions, and it can actually contribute to, I would say, building an ecosystem, building a unified profile for your customers, where the AI can also learn about your customer and feed that information into your CRM and support the whole journey, whether it's live agents helping them in the future or maybe your service team just collecting more information on their use case.
Very cool. I personally, I've learned so much about this technology today. For anybody who's listening who is maybe interested in getting in contact with you, could you just tell people where to find you online? And maybe if it hasn't been clear yet, maybe who like your ideal customer that you guys typically work with is?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, getting in touch, I would say LinkedIn, Alex Doonanco, funny spelling, You'll probably see it somewhere here. In addition to that, you can contact business@airudder.com if you'd like to speak with us or speak with me directly. And in terms of our ideal customer, I would say it is existing paper call networks of people generating large volume of calls where they would like to somehow qualify those calls before sending to a buyer, or they'd like to reactivate the ones that don't initially convert through outbound campaigns. They can be phone calls or SMS. And then those who are downstream from that industry. So legal, insurance, home services, as well as other forms of financial services. Everything from the collections calls to underwriting calls and kind of everything in between.
Very cool. Alex, again, it was a pleasure talking to you. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge. And with that said, that is Arbeit You. Thanks for watching, everyone.